This is another map of Ohio. Again, the southeastern part of Ohio, the corner. But you can see here more closely how this grid starts to look when it's imposed over a relatively large amount of space. And as I said, this is hilly land, right? You don't have to pay attention to topography when you do this. You can just kind of be like, yeah, it's a grid. Looks like a grid to me. I mean, I don't care if there's a mountain or a river. I'm going to put a grid down. And this is exactly what we did. There are a few spots where we made special arrangements for topography, but for the most part, we completely ignored it, right? Look at San Francisco. Somebody looked at that city, which is hills by the ocean, and said, let's put a grid on top of it. So the streets go at 25-degree angles. Well, that's what they did. Pittsburgh is no different. It's been this pattern. And so when you superimpose this, right, on something as big as Ohio, it ends up on the whole country. This is a cartoon, basically, but it ends up in the whole country. So what this represents is basically the way that the systematic land subdivision, they call it here the gridiron pattern, which sounds like a football field, but basically the way this grid was implemented. And it went, as I said, from the Allegheny Appalachians west, right? With Texas, I mean, really, and a little bit in the New Mexico and then the California coast. There are places where it doesn't exist far west, but not many, right? We kind of used this and said, whoosh, we're going to wipe the whole thing clean with a grid. This is the way the planning. So this is one piece of this national planning effort from the 18th century where people are thinking, okay, how are we going to do this? And this is what they did. So the grid that you see out there in the world is the grid that's conceived at this moment. And you've heard of something called the Homestead Act, right? The whole homesteading thing. Some of you might have grandparents or great-great-grandparents that homesteaded. That's based on this. That comes in 1861 during the war. It uses the same concept that's laid out in the 1780s for allocating land. So when Americans start to homestead places like Iowa, Nebraska, and Oklahoma and those places, they're doing it along the same survey lines that they were doing it a generation, 2 generations earlier.